Hi, my name is Shelby Phillips, and the nonfiction book that I chose to read is called Fatal Fever, Tracking Down Typhoid Mary by author Gail Jarrow. There is not an illustrator for this book. All of the illustrations are actual photos and documents, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. So the author of this book is Gail Jarrow. She grew up in southeastern Pennsylvania, and at the age of 7, she wrote and illustrated her first book, which is about a king who is so ticklish he couldn't eat food because it tickled his throat. And from there, she had a strong desire to work with animals, and she was very interested in science. So she went to Duke University and got her bachelor's degree in zoology. After she graduated from college, she taught science writing in elementary and middle schools. But she always had a fascination for medical history, so she started researching background for diseases that may have happened that were once common but rare today, and that is where this book came into effect. And she has published several books about rare diseases. To choose this book, I went Googled online nonfiction books for ages 10 to 14. I came to a website called Bookworm for Kids. Fatal Fever just caught my attention because I also am interested in a lot of medical history. This book is part of a series called the Deadly Disease Trilogy. The first book is called Red Madness, which is about pellagra. And the third book is called Bubonic Panic, and it is about the bubonic plague. A couple of rewards that were received for Fatal Fever. It was on the Best Young Adult Book list for 2015. Bulletin gave it a blue ribbon for nonfiction in 2015. The California Reading Association Eureka gave it the Gold Award. The Young Adult Library Services Association gave it an award for excellence in nonfiction in 2016. And another reason I was interested in this book is the North Carolina School Library Association chose it as one of its 2017-2018 Battle of the Books list for middle school, something my children are part of, and I was very excited and interested to see that there was a nonfiction book on this list. A quick summary of the book is that typhoid fever was running rampant in the United States, and this tells the story of a woman who unwittingly spread the typhoid fever to over 50 people. This gripping story follows the tragic disease with the epidemiologist who follows her trail and discovers where she is hiding, and the fate that the New York Health Department gives to her is that she lives on an island in isolation for over 27 years. 7 interesting things that I learned by reading this book is that Typhoid Mary was an actual person called Mary Mallon. She infected 51 people, killing at least 3, and that's just what they have records of. There may be more people that were infected. She spread the disease while she was a cook for affluent families. She, at one time, was caught and quarantined, but then let go, asked to promise not to get a job as a cook again, which she broke that promise and ended up spreading the disease again to 2 families, and she also got a job at a medical hospital for women. She was very insistent that she was not spreading this disease, nor that she had the bacteria in her body, because she showed no physical symptoms. At one time, doctors thought that if you remove the gallbladder of a person, you would cure them of the disease. They found out that this was not true. And there are several famous people that either recovered or died from the typhoid fever, including Franklin D. Roosevelt, William Howard Taft, and Wilbur Wright of the Wright brothers. The way that Gail Jarrow does her research is she only uses primary sources. She reads medical reports, articles from the time period, old newspapers, letters from key people, and she also researches reports from the Public Health Service, which is now the CDC. So in her author's note, she tells you a little bit more about her research and how she goes about being accurate when she publishes a nonfiction book about a disease. This book I would classify as factual nonfiction because it was marked straightforward with the presentation of known facts. The structure is a combination of a narrative style and expository. Gail Jarrow begins her novel with a narrative by telling the story about Mary Mallon. She was an immigrant from Ireland. She had jobs as a cook with an affluent family. But then the story does shift to expository texts that's organized sequentially to document very key events. The organizational pattern of the book is a combination of sequence and cause and effect. The style, the title alone kind of gives an impression of a mystery or a detective novel by the tracking down of Typhoid Mary fatal fever. A lot of organizational tools can be found in this book. There is an index. Towards the back of the book, I apologize, there is a bibliography. Earlier I showed you her timeline. She has source notes, her author's note, she has further resource section, and she also has a list of well-known victims and sufferers of the typhoid disease. The graphics that she uses and visual features in this book, there are a lot of photographs of the time period. So you can see those here. She uses newspaper articles. She also uses posters, so you can see actually what the public was visualizing during this time. There's a poster of Mary Mallon being depicted as Typhoid Mary, and she's cracking skulls into a frying pan to show that that's how she's spreading the disease. She also uses letters from the time period from actual people. So that is a letter from Mary Mallon to her sister. And then also lots of cartoons. Typically, Gail Jarrow uses medical photographs to understand the disease, but in the case of typhoid fever, there aren't a lot of physical symptoms that you can see on a person that's suffering from it, so she definitely had to rely on words in this novel to describe the disease. I was already familiar with the topic of typhoid fever being in the food industry. I know a lot about foodborne illnesses, but this book's text was written so that I kind of felt involved in the search, almost like the Watson to the Gail Jarrow Sherlock. The photos add to the text, making it very easy to put yourself into that time period. Let's see. I would definitely recommend this book for ages 10 to 14, middle school, going into high school. It's a great book for reference if you are looking into writing a research paper on typhoid fever. There's a lot of visuals. It's a very interesting story. It's not very scientific, and it has a pretty simple vocabulary, and if there is a word that you don't understand, she does have that glossary in the end of the book. It gives kind of an element of adventure and mystery, and there's a very important message in the book is just to wash your hands. Raises a lot of awareness about the disease. I would recommend this book to someone. I enjoyed reading it. The overall message to me, again, is very important. I like the timeline that she added in the back of the book so that you could kind of follow along. And again, towards the back of the book, she, again, repeats that important message that it's just very important to wash those hands. So I did enjoy this book. Again, I would recommend it, and admittedly will probably pick up the other 2 books in the series and give them a try. Thank you.